The city was quiet that morning, with sunlight spilling across the streets and the usual hum of traffic in the background. Officer Daniels and his partner, Officer Reed, were on routine patrol, cruising slowly through the residential neighborhoods. They had been on the force for years, and they prided themselves on knowing their city inside out. But today, something felt different to Daniels. He squinted at a woman walking confidently down the street. She was sharply dressed, moving with purpose, and seemed completely aware of her surroundings. Something about her made him uneasy. "Notice her?" Daniels whispered to Reed, nudging his partner. Reed nodded, watching the woman from the corner of his eye. "She's around that area a lot," Daniels said. "I've seen her near the docks, near the high-security buildings. Never thought much of it until now." They exchanged glances, both feeling a mix of curiosity and suspicion. There was something about the way she carried herself, the kind of quiet authority that made you want to step back without even realizing it. The officers didn't know her name. They didn't know what she did. All they knew was that she made them feel like they were missing something important. The woman, Commander Ayanna Brooks, was unaware of the two officers following her. Her morning had been packed with meetings and briefings. She had an elite task force to manage, one that dealt with some of the most dangerous situations in the world. Her job required precision, calm under pressure, and the ability to anticipate problems before they arose. Ayanna moved with quiet confidence, her steps steady, her gaze focused. She had grown used to being underestimated, to people making assumptions based on what they saw on the surface. It didn't bother her. She had bigger things to worry about, lives to protect and threats to neutralize. The officers trailing her had no idea what they were getting into. Daniels and Reed parked their car a block away, trying to blend in as they watched Ayanna enter a building that had reinforced doors and security cameras at every entrance. Daniels muttered under his breath, "Who even works there? Some kind of government office?" Reed shrugged. "Maybe, but why does she go there so often? Doesn't look like a regular employee." They both felt a growing sense of unease. Their curiosity turned into obsession as they started piecing together the few observations they had. Every movement she made seemed calculated, and every interaction she had seemed purposeful. They wanted to know more, to uncover what they assumed was some kind of secret activity. Inside the building, Ayanna moved through the halls with ease. Her team members greeted her with respect, clearly accustomed to her presence. She checked schedules, adjusted plans, and ensured that operations were running smoothly. Her day was full of back-to-back tasks, each requiring her full attention. Yet she managed to stay composed, smiling occasionally at her team, offering words of encouragement and making sure that everyone was on the same page. She didn't notice the subtle glances from the security cameras, some of which had captured the officers' curiosity-driven surveillance. But even if she did, it wouldn't faze her. She had faced countless challenges and threats, and the idea of being watched by two uniformed officers was trivial in comparison. Outside, Daniels and Reed continued their stakeout. They followed her movements as she left the building, taking notes, whispering theories to each other. "She went in there and came out like it was nothing," Daniels said, frustration creeping into his voice. "But there's got to be more. No one moves like that for a regular job." Reed nodded in agreement, trying to keep his own nerves in check. They didn't realize that their assumptions were clouded by their own biases and lack of knowledge. They saw only what they wanted to see, constructing a story that fit their limited understanding. Ayanna went on with her day, attending meetings in different locations, coordinating operations and making critical decisions. She never once looked flustered or unsure. Every choice she made was deliberate, informed by experience and strategy. She stopped briefly at a cafe, ordering a simple coffee and reviewing documents on a tablet. The officers, still lingering nearby, whispered among themselves about what they thought was suspicious behavior. They didn't know that each action Ayanna took was part of a larger plan, a carefully orchestrated system to keep her team and countless civilians safe from dangerous threats. The afternoon brought more tension. Ayanna had to handle a potential threat that required immediate attention. She communicated with her team through encrypted channels, coordinating a response that would neutralize the danger before it could escalate. Daniels and Reed, unaware of the true stakes, continued their surveillance, convinced that she was involved in something illegal. They followed her to a parking garage, keeping their distance, their minds racing with assumptions. The officers' misunderstanding of the situation only grew, fueled by their own prejudices and lack of insight. They were blind to the reality that Ayana's every move was protective, calculated and life-saving. As evening approached, Ayana returned to her office, checking in on her team one last time before the day ended. She reviewed reports, confirmed schedules for the next day, and ensured that every operation under her supervision was on track. Her presence inspired confidence in her team, a quiet but powerful force that motivated everyone to perform at their best. Outside, Daniels and Reed were still parked, tired but unwilling to give up. They were determined to uncover what they believed was hidden, unable to see that the real story was far beyond their understanding. Ayana left the building and walked through the city streets, the sun setting behind her. She noticed subtle signs that the officers were still following her, but chose not to confront them yet. She understood the human tendency to misjudge and underestimate, and she knew the right time to reveal the truth. Her focus remained on her responsibilities, on protecting lives and ensuring the safety of her team. The officers, on the other hand, grew increasingly frustrated. They had invested hours into their surveillance, convinced that they were close to exposing some wrongdoing, but they had no idea that they were merely witnessing the disciplined routine of one of the most capable and dangerous leaders in the world. As the night settled in, Ayana entered her secure residence, a place designed for both comfort and safety. She moved through her home with the same confidence and calm as during her day. Daniels and Reed finally parked a block away, debating whether to approach her directly. Neither realized how little they actually knew. Their assumptions had guided them this far, but they were about to learn that appearances could be deceiving. Ayana's life, her authority, and her mission were far beyond what they could imagine. The night closed in with tension lingering in the air, a silent warning that the next steps they took could change everything, for them and for her. By the end of the day, the officers were left exhausted and confused, unable to reconcile their assumptions with the reality of what they had observed. Ayana, meanwhile, remained calm, aware, and in control, setting the stage for the confrontation that was slowly approaching. The city moved on around them, unaware of the quiet storm of authority, intelligence, and power that Commander Ayana Brooks commanded, a storm that would soon force those who underestimated her to face the truth. The next morning, the city was waking up with the usual rush of activity. Ayana Brooks started her day early, arriving at her operations center before most people had even finished their breakfast. The building itself looked ordinary from the outside, just another nondescript office block in the city. But inside it was a hub of constant activity, screens flickering with live feeds from all over the world, communications channels buzzing, and her team moving with quiet efficiency. Ayana stepped into the room, her presence commanding attention without needing to raise her voice. She knew everyone by name, understood their strengths and weaknesses, and could predict their actions with surprising accuracy. Each person on her team respected her, not because they had to, but because they trusted her knowledge, judgment, and dedication. Daniels and Reed, still obsessed with uncovering what they thought was suspicious, had spent the night discussing a plan. They couldn't shake the image of Ayana from their minds, her poise, her confidence, the sense that she was always in control. "We need to find out exactly what she's up to," Daniels said. "Something doesn't add up. How can someone move like that and not be hiding something?" Reed nodded, even though a part of him felt uneasy. They had no idea they were dealing with someone whose responsibilities and influence reached far beyond their imagination. Inside the operations center, Ayana was in her element. Her morning started with a briefing, where she outlined the team's objectives for the day. Each mission, each task required meticulous planning and coordination. She moved seamlessly from one station to another, checking on progress, giving guidance, and making adjustments where necessary. Her attention to detail was unmatched, and yet she never micromanaged. Her team felt supported, empowered, and confident because they knew she had thought through every scenario. Ayana understood the stakes, lives were on the line, and mistakes could be deadly. This was not a job for showmanship. It required focus, intelligence, and a calm mind under pressure. Meanwhile, Daniels and Reed decided to shadow her again, hoping to gather some concrete evidence of wrongdoing. They parked at a distance, trying to act casual while keeping an eye on her every move. Their observations were narrow, filtered by their assumptions and prejudices. They didn't see the careful planning, the life-saving decisions, or the global intelligence her team relied on. They only saw a black woman moving with confidence, and in their limited understanding, that seemed suspicious. They whispered back and forth, drawing conclusions that were increasingly disconnected from reality, completely unaware that the woman they were watching had the power to neutralize threats they couldn't even imagine. Ayanna left the operations center for a scheduled site inspection. Her team accompanied her, carrying out their assigned roles with precision. She moved through the facility with a sense of calm authority, observing security measures, reviewing protocols, and asking insightful questions that highlighted her expertise. Everyone she interacted with responded with respect and professionalism. It was clear to anyone who saw her that she was in charge, but her authority was earned through competence and leadership, not intimidation. She was approachable yet firm, empathetic yet decisive, a combination that made her uniquely effective. Back outside, Daniels and Reed followed at a safe distance, still trying to piece together what they assumed was a mystery. "She's too careful, too precise," Daniels muttered. "She's hiding something, I'm sure of it." Reed hesitated, feeling a twinge of doubt but unwilling to admit it. They watched as Ayanna entered a high-security wing of the building. She greeted the staff there with familiarity and ease, discussing logistics and security measures as though she had been in control for years, which she had. Their frustration grew, but they couldn't put a finger on why her actions didn't match their expectations of someone who was supposedly suspicious. Inside the secure area, Ayanna's team was preparing for a complex operation. She moved between stations, checking communication lines, reviewing intelligence reports, and making last-minute adjustments. Each decision she made was informed by experience, instinct, and strategy. Her team operated like a well-oiled machine, following her guidance without hesitation. Ayanna watched closely, recognizing the smallest discrepancies and correcting them immediately. Always calm, always in control. Her focus never wavered even when minor issues arose. She understood that even small errors could have major consequences, and she handled each situation with precision and authority. As the day progressed, Ayanna received updates from field agents who were monitoring a potential threat in another part of the city. She listened carefully, asking detailed questions and offering solutions that minimized risk while maximizing efficiency. Her mind was constantly analyzing, predicting, and preparing. She moved with purpose, a mix of intellect and intuition guiding her every step. Daniels and Reed, still trailing her, saw some of the meetings and interactions but misinterpreted everything. They assumed that secrecy equaled wrongdoing, missing the real truth entirely. Ayanna's calm demeanor and professional efficiency were, in their eyes, evidence of some hidden agenda, when in fact it was the hallmark of a highly skilled leader managing dangerous, high-stakes work. By afternoon, Ayanna was coordinating a multi-team operation. Her instructions were clear, concise, and decisive. She delegated responsibilities according to each team member's strengths, ensuring that every angle was covered. Her team executed each task flawlessly, a reflection of the training, trust, and leadership that Ayanna had cultivated. Outside, Daniels and Reed watched, more convinced than ever that something illicit was happening. They didn't realize that every move Ayanna made was a calculated measure to prevent danger, protect civilians, and ensure the safety of her team. They were blind to the reality that she was the central figure in a network designed to neutralize some of the most dangerous threats in the world. Ayanna took a short break mid-afternoon, reviewing reports and communicating with international contacts. She sipped a cup of coffee, her mind still working through scenarios, anticipating challenges and planning contingencies. Her life required constant mental engagement, and she thrived under that pressure. Daniels and Reed continued their surveillance, growing increasingly anxious and frustrated. They could not reconcile the outwardly calm and composed woman they saw with their preconceived notions of what a person involved in clandestine operations should look like. Their assumptions blinded them to the truth of her work, her influence, and her authority. Later in the day, Ayanna made a quick visit to a partner agency, discussing joint operations and sharing intelligence. Her reputation preceded her. Staff greeted her with respect, and even in casual conversation it was clear that she commanded authority. She was articulate, confident, and precise, qualities that drew admiration and trust from everyone she met. Daniels and Reed watched from a distance, whispering theories to each other. Each interaction they saw, each confident gesture she made, only added to their confusion. They couldn't comprehend that her competence and calm authority were the very things that made her one of the most powerful leaders in her field. As evening approached, Ayanna returned to her operations center. She checked in with her team, reviewed the day's progress, and ensured that all systems were running smoothly. She offered feedback, encouragement, and insight, maintaining a balance between authority and empathy. Her team left the center motivated and prepared for the next day, confident that they were led by someone who could handle any situation. Daniels and Reed, exhausted from hours of futile surveillance, debated their next move. They still believed they were on the verge of uncovering some hidden activity, unaware that the woman they followed had the power to dismantle dangerous networks and neutralize threats they couldn't even imagine. As night fell, Ayanna left the building, walking through the quiet city streets with her usual composed demeanor. She noticed the distant figures of Daniels and Reed, aware that they had been following her again. She didn't confront them, choosing instead to let the day end calmly, understanding that their misconceptions would soon lead them to their own realizations. Her focus remained on her team, her operations, and the ongoing mission to protect the public from dangers that remained largely invisible to ordinary eyes. The city around her carried on without noticing the quiet power she commanded, the unseen influence she exerted, and the invisible safety net her work provided. Daniels and Reed remained frustrated, unaware of the true scale of what they had witnessed, their assumptions steering them farther from the truth. Ayanna's day ended as it had begun, with control, confidence, and an unshakable calm. She was preparing for challenges that no one else could see, handling responsibilities that only a few could imagine, and moving with a purpose that would soon force those who underestimated her to confront the reality of her unparalleled authority. The next day, the tension was palpable. Daniels and Reed had decided it was time to confront Ayanna Brooks directly. Their assumptions had grown stronger overnight, fueled by their own biases and the mysterious aura they perceived around her. They parked their car near her usual route, whispering to each other about how they would approach her. "We need to ask her questions," Daniels said, a mix of determination and anxiety in his voice. "See what she's hiding?" Reed nodded, still hesitant but unwilling to back down now. They watched as Ayanna approached, carrying herself with her usual quiet authority. She moved through the city streets confidently, unaware of the confrontation that was about to happen. Ayanna noticed them from a distance but did not alter her pace or expression. She understood human behavior well enough to recognize when people were acting out of ignorance or prejudice. She didn't confront them yet, knowing it would be more effective to let them make their assumptions and mistakes. Her focus remained on her responsibilities, but she mentally prepared for the conversation that was inevitable. The officers, meanwhile, gathered their courage and stepped closer, calling out to her. "Excuse me, ma'am," Daniels said, trying to sound authoritative. "We've seen you around a lot and we just need to ask a few questions." Ayanna stopped, turning to face them. Her expression was calm, her body language relaxed, yet there was an undeniable presence about her that immediately commanded attention. She gave them a polite but firm smile. "I'm listening," she said. Her voice carried authority without aggression, a subtle reminder that she was not someone to underestimate. Reed, feeling slightly intimidated, took a step back but tried to maintain composure. "We've noticed you visiting high-security areas and interacting with important officials," Daniels continued. "We just want to understand what you're doing." "It seems suspicious." Ayanna's smile widened slightly, though her eyes remained steady. She could see the mix of curiosity, prejudice, and fear in their expressions. "I'm the commander of a covert task force," she explained calmly. "Our work involves handling threats that the public rarely sees. We coordinate operations that protect lives and prevent crises around the world. Everything I do is part of that responsibility." Daniels and Reed exchanged glances, their confidence wavering. "A task force?" Reed asked, struggling to hide his disbelief. "We had no idea. Are you serious?" Ayanna nodded. "Completely serious. My team and I handle some of the most dangerous situations globally. Our work is sensitive, so it's not always visible or understood. That's why you might have misinterpreted my actions." The officers stood in silence, grappling with the reality that their assumptions had been entirely wrong. They had approached her with suspicion, ready to accuse, and yet they were now facing the undeniable truth of her authority and power. Ayanna continued. explaining the nature of her work in general terms, careful not to disclose any classified information. She spoke of strategy, planning, coordination, and the high stakes involved in keeping communities and nations safe. Every word reinforced her competence and the seriousness of her responsibilities. Daniels and Reed listened, increasingly aware that they had underestimated her completely. The confidence they had carried into this confrontation was slowly eroding, replaced by a mix of awe and shame. Seeing their hesitation, Ayanna softened her tone slightly. "I understand it might be hard to believe," she said. "But it's important to recognize that appearances can be deceiving. Just because you don't see the full picture doesn't mean someone isn't making a difference. My team and I work behind the scenes to prevent harm, and we do it without public recognition. That's the nature of this work." The officers remained quiet, realizing that their assumptions had blinded them to the truth. They had judged her based on surface-level observations, failing to appreciate the intelligence, skill, and responsibility required for her role. Ayanna paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. Then she addressed the prejudice underlying their assumptions, but with grace rather than accusation. "It's easy to misjudge someone when you don't have all the information," she said. "But it's important to question your biases and assumptions. Underestimating people because of who they are or how they look can lead to mistakes and missed opportunities. You've been following me, trying to uncover something hidden when in reality, the most important things I do are for the safety and security of others." Daniel swallowed hard, feeling a mix of embarrassment and respect. He realized that they had been wrong to assume malintent based on superficial observations. Reed, too, felt a sense of regret for letting prejudice guide his judgment. Ayanna's calm authority, intelligence, and integrity were overwhelming, leaving them with little room for argument. They had come prepared to confront her, but now they were confronted with the reality of their own misunderstandings. After a few moments of silence, Ayanna added, "I hope this helps you understand that not everything is as it seems. Leadership and responsibility often operate quietly, away from public scrutiny. My goal is not to be seen or recognized, but to make sure people are safe and secure. That's the work that truly matters." Her words were measured, yet they carried a weight that made it clear she had lived through experiences that demanded courage, skill, and composure. Daniels and Reed nodded, unable to fully articulate their thoughts. The confrontation had shifted from suspicion and prejudice to understanding and reflection. Ayanna then subtly reminded them of the risks of interfering in operations they didn't fully comprehend. "I trust that moving forward you'll exercise caution and awareness," she said. "Your role as officers is important, but so is respecting the work of those who handle situations beyond your purview. Missteps can have serious consequences." The officers realized that their actions could have unintentionally jeopardized critical operations. They felt a deepening respect for Ayanna's knowledge, judgment, and the responsibilities she carried with unwavering dedication. As Ayanna continued on her way, Daniels and Reed stood there, absorbing the lessons of the confrontation. Their assumptions, biases, and suspicions had been challenged, replaced by a clearer understanding of her authority and the magnitude of her work. They could no longer view her through the narrow lens of prejudice. Instead, they were forced to acknowledge her leadership, her intelligence, and her role in safeguarding countless lives. Ayanna's day continued, but the encounter had left a lasting impact on those officers. They were quieter, more thoughtful, and more aware of the dangers of misjudgment. She moved through the city streets with her usual composure, completely focused on her responsibilities and her team. Her interactions were purposeful, her decisions deliberate, and her presence commanding. Daniels and Reed, once consumed by suspicion, now carried a mix of respect, humility, and the understanding that appearances could be deceiving. The city moved on around them, oblivious to the subtle shift that had occurred. Ayanna had demonstrated that true authority comes from competence, intelligence, and integrity, rather than appearances or assumptions. The officers had learned a powerful lesson about prejudice, judgment, and the quiet but significant influence of those who work behind the scenes. Ayanna's mission continued, her focus unwavering, and her presence a reminder that true leadership often operates unseen, shaping outcomes in ways that few can fully appreciate. As night fell, Ayanna returned to her secure residence, reflecting briefly on the day. Her team had performed flawlessly, and critical operations were progressing as planned. The confrontation with Daniels and Reed had been a minor distraction, but it also served as a reminder of the importance of patience, understanding, and the quiet correction of misconceptions. She moved through her home with the same calm authority she displayed during the day, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference. The officers, on the other hand, were left grappling with their assumptions, a mixture of awe and shame settling in. They had confronted a woman they believed was suspicious, only to discover that she commanded one of the most dangerous and influential task forces in the world. Their perspective had shifted, and though it would take time to fully process, the encounter had irrevocably changed their understanding of power, leadership, and the dangers of prejudice. The following morning, Ayanna Brooks returned to her operations center, ready to oversee another day of critical missions. The city outside continued its ordinary rhythm, but inside her building, every second mattered. Her team moved efficiently, responding to updates, analyzing intelligence, and preparing for complex operations. Ayanna walked through the center, offering guidance, encouragement, and insight, making sure that every team member understood their role and responsibilities. Her presence was steady and reassuring, a constant reminder of competence and calm in the midst of chaos. Meanwhile, Daniels and Reed were still grappling with the revelations from their previous confrontation. Their assumptions had been shattered, and they were left uncertain about how to proceed. The realization that Ayanna commanded a highly dangerous and influential task force weighed on them heavily. They had expected suspicion, maybe even deception, but instead they had encountered clarity, authority, and purpose. They sat in their car, debating their next move, unsure of whether to approach her again or to step back entirely. Ayanna, aware of their continued attention, decided to handle the situation strategically. She didn't confront them aggressively, nor did she dismiss them without thought. She knew that any public confrontation could escalate unnecessarily and potentially affect her operations. Instead, she chose to reveal her identity and authority in a controlled manner that would ensure understanding, respect, and clarity. Her plan was subtle yet decisive, reflecting the same careful thinking that guided her work in the field. Throughout the day, she coordinated multiple operations simultaneously. Field agents reported potential threats requiring careful assessment and rapid response. Ayanna moved from one station to another, checking communication lines, confirming plans, and ensuring that every operation proceeded smoothly. Her team followed her guidance with trust and precision, knowing that she had anticipated every challenge and contingency. The operations were complex and high stakes, but Ayanna's calm, informed presence ensured that everything ran efficiently and effectively. As the afternoon approached, Ayanna organized a press simulation exercise designed to reveal aspects of her work without exposing sensitive details. She invited representatives from multiple agencies, carefully guiding the narrative to highlight her team's responsibilities and the risks they managed daily. Her goal was not publicity but understanding. She wanted those observing to grasp the complexity and seriousness of the work her team undertook. Daniels and Reed, unaware of the setup, decided to attend, curious to see what she would do next. During the simulation, Ayanna demonstrated the coordination required to neutralize a high-risk threat. She walked participants through decision-making processes, highlighting communication strategies, intelligence analysis, and the importance of precise execution. Her explanation was clear, engaging, and authoritative. Everyone present, including Daniels and Reed, could see the depth of her skill and the weight of her responsibilities. The officers began to realize just how wrong their assumptions had been and how far beyond their understanding her daily work reached. Ayanna then took a moment to address the broader audience, emphasizing the importance of respect, awareness, and understanding in law enforcement and public service. She explained that assumptions based on appearance or partial information could lead to mistakes and misjudgments. It's easy to make quick judgments, she said, but leadership, responsibility, and service often happen behind the scenes. What you see is only part of the story. The work that truly matters is often invisible, but it shapes the safety and security of communities in ways that everyone benefits from, even if they don't realize it. Her words were measured but powerful, and they resonated with everyone present, especially Daniels and Reed, who now faced the reality of their errors. After the session, Ayana engaged with attendees, answering questions carefully, ensuring that the information remained accurate without revealing classified details. Daniels and Reed approached her again, this time with caution and genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. They listened attentively as she explained operational procedures and the reasoning behind decisions, slowly beginning to comprehend the scope and scale of her work. Their earlier confrontational stance had completely shifted, replaced by respect and a desire to understand rather than judge. Ayana noticed their change in demeanor and addressed them with calm clarity. "I know it can be difficult to recognize the scale of responsibility someone carries when you see only fragments of their actions," she said. "I hope today helps you understand that judgment without understanding can be misleading and harmful. It's always important to look beyond appearances and assumptions." Daniels and Reed nodded silently, fully aware of the lesson they had just received. They realized how their initial biases had clouded their judgment and how narrowly they had viewed the world. As the day progressed, Ayana returned to her operations, ensuring that each task was completed efficiently. Her team handled multiple operations across the city, following her guidance and expertise. Every action she took was deliberate and informed, reflecting the vast experience she brought to her role. The officers observed quietly, taking in the scale, precision, and gravity of the work. They were beginning to understand that their previous assumptions had been not only incorrect, but dangerously uninformed. By evening, Ayana decided it was time to formally reveal her position to the public in a controlled announcement. She appeared at a secure location with her team, giving a statement about the work they did to protect communities and neutralize threats. She emphasized that much of the work remained unseen, but its impact was profound and critical to public safety. Her calm, confident delivery commanded attention and respect, leaving no room for doubt about her authority, expertise, or the seriousness of her responsibilities. Daniels and Reed watched from a distance, realizing the full extent of the task force she led, and the danger they would have been in had they interfered without understanding. They felt a mixture of awe, humility, and embarrassment, recognizing the depth of their earlier misjudgment. Ayana's carefully orchestrated reveal had shown them not only the truth of her authority, but also the consequences of prejudice and assumptions. The lesson was clear, powerful, and unforgettable. After the announcement, Ayana's team returned to the operations center, debriefing and reviewing the day's progress. She provided feedback and encouragement, ensuring that each team member felt recognized for their contributions. The officers now outside reflected on the day's events. They had approached Ayana with suspicion and bias, but had left with a profound respect for her leadership, intelligence, and courage. Their perspective had shifted dramatically, and they were forced to acknowledge the true power, responsibility, and influence she wielded quietly behind the scenes. As night fell, Ayana returned to her residence, her day ending as it had begun, with calm authority, focus, and determination. Her work continued uninterrupted, her influence extending far beyond what most people could perceive. Daniels and Reed left the area with a new understanding, their assumptions dismantled and their respect earned. Ayana had demonstrated that leadership, competence, and courage often operate quietly, unseen but profoundly impactful. The day closed with the realization that true authority is not in appearances or assumptions, but in knowledge, action, and integrity. The city continued its rhythm, unaware of the invisible hand guiding safety and security. Led by a woman whose skill, courage, and leadership shaped outcomes far beyond the public eye. The day began quietly, but for Ayana Brooks there was no time for rest. Her task force continued to operate around the clock, handling threats that most people would never even know existed. She arrived at the operations center with the same calm authority that had guided her through countless challenges before. Her team greeted her, each member ready for the day ahead, knowing that their leader's judgment, insight, and expertise were the foundation of every mission. Daniels and Reed, still processing the lessons of the past days, decided to observe from a distance once more. They no longer followed with suspicion or prejudice, but with curiosity and a desire to understand. They wanted to see firsthand the work of someone whose authority and responsibility they had underestimated. They watched as Ayana moved through the center, checking on operations, coordinating teams, and making rapid, informed decisions. Every action demonstrated skill, foresight, and calm under pressure. It was a stark contrast to the assumptions they had made. and it humbled them. As the morning progressed, Ayanna received reports of a developing situation. A coordinated response was required, and she quickly assessed the intelligence, delegating tasks to her team with precision. Field agents were deployed, communications were maintained flawlessly, and every contingency was considered. Ayanna's focus was unwavering. She remained calm even as new information arrived, processing it quickly and adjusting plans as needed. Her ability to anticipate problems and respond effectively was evident in every movement, every decision, every instruction she gave. Daniels and Reed watched as her team executed complex tasks, clearly trusting Ayanna's leadership. They began to understand the weight of responsibility she carried and the trust her team placed in her. It was clear that her authority was not a product of fear or appearance, but of competence, intelligence, and the respect she earned through consistent leadership. Their previous assumptions about her were completely overturned, replaced by a growing recognition of her extraordinary skill. By midday, Ayanna had coordinated a multi-location operation that required simultaneous actions from her team and partner agencies. She monitored progress, provided guidance, and ensured communication remained flawless. The stakes were high, and any mistake could have serious consequences. Her leadership ensured that every aspect of the operation moved smoothly, and her team executed tasks with confidence, knowing that their leader had prepared for every possibility. Daniels and Reed continued to observe, increasingly aware of the dangers that Ayanna managed and the skill required to keep everything under control. Ayanna took a moment to address her team collectively, highlighting the importance of their work and reinforcing the principles that guided their actions. She emphasized focus, integrity, and collaboration, reminding everyone that their efforts protected lives and maintained security on a scale most people could not imagine. Her words were motivating without being boastful, a reflection of her character and understanding of leadership. The officers were struck by the impact of her words, realizing that true leadership inspires through action and guidance rather than intimidation or authority alone. Later in the afternoon, Ayanna received an urgent update about a potential threat in a critical area. She immediately coordinated with her field agents, analyzing the situation, assigning tasks, and monitoring progress. Her calm and precise instructions allowed her team to act quickly and efficiently, neutralizing the threat without public attention or disruption. Daniels and Reed, observing from a distance, were finally able to see the practical application of her leadership, understanding the complexity and urgency of the situations she managed daily. The officers felt a mix of awe and humility. They had approached Ayanna with prejudice, assuming malintent where there was none. Over the past days, they had witnessed her competence, authority, and dedication. Now they could see clearly that their assumptions had been based on ignorance and bias. Ayanna's actions had not only safeguarded lives, but had also quietly corrected their misconceptions, teaching a lesson in leadership, responsibility, and respect. As evening approached, Ayanna returned to the operations center to review the day's activities and prepare for the next round of missions. She debriefed her team, ensuring that everyone understood what had been accomplished and what needed attention. Her approach was supportive and authoritative, providing guidance without overbearing control. Each member of her team left the center with a sense of accomplishment and clarity, confident in their roles and reassured by their leader's oversight. Daniels and Reed observed her final interactions with the team and were struck by the trust and loyalty she inspired. They realized that true authority and respect were earned, not assumed, and that Ayanna had demonstrated this through competence, fairness, and dedication. Their respect for her grew, accompanied by a sense of regret for their earlier assumptions and actions. They understood now that appearances could be deceiving, and that judging someone without full knowledge could lead to serious misunderstandings. After ensuring that her operations were stable for the night, Ayanna left the center and walked through the city streets. Her mind was already assessing potential situations for the next day, planning strategies and anticipating challenges. She moved with the same quiet confidence that had defined her throughout the week, aware of the unseen influence she had on the safety and security of countless people. Daniels and Reed followed at a safe distance, reflecting silently on the lessons they had learned. They had witnessed authority, skill, and leadership at its highest level, and they would never forget the experience. Ayanna arrived at her secure residence, her day ending as it had begun, focused, calm, and prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead. Her team's efforts, her planning, and her leadership had ensured that the city remained safe, that threats were neutralized, and that her mission continued uninterrupted. Daniels and Reed, now understanding the true scale of her responsibility, left the area with a newfound respect and humility, carrying a lesson about bias, judgment, and the unseen work of those who truly protect and lead. As the night settled, the city remained unaware of the quiet influence that shaped its safety and security. Ayanna's work was far from over, and she would continue to lead with precision, integrity, and courage. Her story served as a reminder that true power often operates behind the scenes, unseen but profoundly impactful. For those willing to look beyond assumptions and understand responsibility, her leadership was an example of intelligence, skill, and unwavering commitment to the greater good. The officers' journey from suspicion to respect marked the closing chapter of their encounter with Ayanna, highlighting the importance of understanding, humility, and recognition of true authority. And as she rested briefly before preparing for the next day, Ayanna knew that her mission, protecting lives and commanding her task force, would continue, unseen by most but critical to the safety and stability of the world around her. The city woke slowly, with the first rays of sunlight casting a warm glow over the streets. Ayanna Brooks was already at her operations center, her mind alert and focused. Though the previous week had been intense, she knew that challenges never truly ended. Her team was ready, and she moved among them with the same calm authority that had defined her for years. Each member responded to her guidance instinctively, trusting her judgment and experience. Today, Ayanna had new objectives, plans that required careful attention, intelligence, and decisive action. Outside the operations center, Daniels and Reed were parked a distance away. The lessons of the past days had changed them. They no longer watched with suspicion or prejudice. Instead, they observed with understanding, now aware of the immense responsibility Ayanna carried and the precision required to manage her team and operations. Every move she made demonstrated discipline, foresight, and competence. They whispered to each other occasionally, sharing insights and acknowledging how wrong they had been to judge her earlier. Ayanna's morning began with updates from global intelligence sources. A situation in a neighboring city required immediate attention. Reports indicated potential criminal activity that could escalate quickly. She analyzed the information, communicated with field agents, and developed a plan that balanced urgency with safety. Her instructions were precise, and her team followed them without hesitation. Every step was calculated, every decision informed by experience and insight. Ayanna had faced similar challenges countless times before, and she approached each new problem with the same unwavering focus. Daniels and Reed, watching from a distance, started to grasp the scale of her responsibilities. They saw her giving clear, calm orders, coordinating multiple operations at once and adjusting plans as new intelligence came in. It was clear that Ayanna operated on a level far beyond what they had imagined. They were humbled by the realization that their previous assumptions had been completely unfounded, and that her true authority extended across cities, influencing outcomes in ways most people would never see. As the day progressed, Ayanna's team moved to execute their plan. Field agents coordinated to gather information and secure locations, while analysts provided continuous updates. Ayanna monitored every detail, offering guidance and making rapid adjustments. She remained calm under pressure, her presence steady and reassuring. The officers could see the trust her team placed in her, and how seamlessly they worked together. It was a display of leadership, competence, and careful planning that left no room for error. Midday brought unexpected complications. A new threat emerged in an area critical to the operation, requiring immediate intervention. Ayanna quickly assessed the situation, rerouted her team, and coordinated additional support without losing composure. Her strategic thinking ensured that both the original mission and the new threat were addressed simultaneously. Daniels and Reed, watching from their vantage point, were struck by her ability to stay calm and make split-second decisions under pressure. They realized that they had never seen leadership like this in their lives, and it left them both amazed and humbled. Ayanna then communicated with local authorities to ensure minimal disruption to civilians while managing the operation. Her approach was thoughtful, professional, and assertive. She explained instructions clearly and ensured that every party involved understood their responsibilities. This careful coordination prevented panic, confusion, and mistakes, allowing the operation to proceed smoothly. Daniels and Reed, now fully aware of the complexity and importance of her work, began to respect not only her skill but also her judgment and foresight. By afternoon, the situation was under control, thanks to Ayana's leadership and the coordinated efforts of her team. Field agents reported success in securing the area, and analysts confirmed that the threat had been neutralized. Ayana took a brief moment to debrief her team, acknowledging their hard work and reinforcing the principles that guided their actions. Her encouragement was genuine, her praise well-deserved, and her focus always on improvement and preparation for future challenges. The officers remained silent as they absorbed what they had witnessed. They realized the depth of their earlier misjudgment and the danger of assumptions. Ayana had not only corrected their misconceptions but had demonstrated leadership, integrity, and expertise in ways they could never have imagined. They felt a mix of admiration, humility, and a desire to learn from the example she had set. As evening approached, Ayana returned to her operations center to review the day's progress and prepare for tomorrow's tasks. She met with her team to analyze outcomes, discuss lessons learned, and ensure that all systems were functioning optimally. Her ability to maintain clarity, focus, and efficiency even after a long and demanding day was remarkable. Every decision she made reinforced the trust her team had in her, and her quiet presence continued to inspire confidence and commitment. Daniels and Reed left the area that night with a deep understanding of the responsibilities and pressures Ayana managed daily. They reflected on how easily appearances can mislead, how quickly assumptions can form, and how important it is to respect knowledge and experience. They had approached her expecting to uncover wrongdoing, but instead, they had learned about courage, competence, and the quiet authority of someone who truly protects and leads. Ayana, meanwhile, settled into her residence with a brief sense of relief, knowing that the day's operations had been successful. She allowed herself a moment of reflection, thinking about the trust her team placed in her, the challenges ahead, and the people whose lives depended on her decisions. Though the city around her slept unaware of the dangers it had avoided, she remained vigilant, ready for whatever challenges the next day might bring.